Hi, it is Alex. Welcome to today's video. As we all know, applying to university is very stressful, especially when you have to work alongside with your grades on all these supplementary applications. So today, I would like to walk you through my journey and my experience when I was applying to business schools back in 2018 and I hope that will shed some light onto how you can approach on these supplementary applications or business school applications in general. So first and foremost, we have grades. I received my offer in around early April. So they have taken my interim results for my second semester into consideration, and at that time my grades is at 92 on the lower 90s, and I knew it was not as competitive as the ones or like as my friends who have gotten in would have. So I knew that I had to pour in a lot of effort onto my supplementary applications. But there are two things that I really wanted to share about grades in general, and the first one is do not really trust or believe anyone says about you'd have to pass like 87 to make the pile, to make the cut, and this is not true in any way, or even if it is not accurate, because if you think about like by the time when you got that information, that would have been a historical thing, because every year we have you have a different class of students applying to different programs, so the competitive pool of students are gonna be different. So it might be 90 for Ivey last year, and for this year it might be different. So do not believe in that. And the second thing I wanted to share about is grade 11 marks. So funny enough, like I came to Canada in grade 11, and I overloaded a lot of classes, and my average is mid-low 80s, and I still made it to this program. And I just wanted to say that like grade 11 marks truly do matter to some extent when it comes to early acceptance, when it comes to scholarships. But then if you're going to your grade 12 with like a very poor grade 11 marks, like do not really like disqualify yourself because of that. Just try your best in grade 12 and see how far can that take you. So next we have extracurriculars. So first I want to walk you through a list of like activities that I partake in high school. Then I will spend a lot more time onto the 3 core activities where I wrote an essay about. So in grade 9, in grade 10, I was in the track team, I was in the soccer team, rugby team, and I was a student ambassador for my high school back in Hong Kong. And in grade 11 to 12, I worked for 2 jobs. The first one at the TNT supermarket as a meat colleague, and the second one was a camp counselor position at my home church for 3 consecutive summer, 10, 11, and 12. And then I have also partaken in around 2 to 3 case competitions. And the most notable one is the Y2 Entrepreneurship Lab, where I won a case competition back in grade 11. And on top of that, I was a student leader for a Chinese literacy contest nonprofit organization called Kelsey. And I was the ESL representative for the prom committee or the graduating committee. And the last but not least, I am also on the varsity soccer team for my school. So that's about it. And a lot of times, like people try to see that session as a place to like for you to drop all the bombs, drop all the activities that you partake in. But I truly want to remind you that this session is not gonna make or break anything, because bulk of like the application goes into the supplementary applications, which are the essays, as well as the grades that you submit. So if you think about what does this session really serve, like what kind of purpose does it serve? It really serves as a platform to you to communicate what kind of personality, like what kind of person you have, like what personality you have. So for me, like I want to be perceived as a person who has a really strong cultural background, where I came from Hong Kong. I want to be perceived as a person who's very sporty, who loves soccer in particular. And last but not least, I want to be seen as a person who is very active and participative in his home church, taking care of children, organizing programs, volunteering, and things like that. So my advice on that particular like bullet point session is that don't try to overcomplicate things. Try to envision yourself. How do you want to be perceived as a person, and how do you want to be remembered by the audience? And once you decide from there, you can fill in the blanks, saying like I did this and that kind of aligns and like refers to that personality that you set for yourself. So now let's get into the nitty gritties. The 3 supplementary essays, 500 words each. And the first one I wrote about the YT Entrepreneurship Lab case competitions, and I talk about how I scratched the surface of business and how I was introduced to the idea of case competitions, startups, businesses in general, and how I have fallen in love with it because it's so fast-paced, you're always working in teams, and at the end of it, I tie back to the Ivey curriculum, how it was 100% case-based, and I believe that really helped me communicate like my spark to interest and how Ivey would be a great fit for me. And the second essays, I talk about how I took part as a camp counselor for 3 consecutive summers, grade 10, 11, and 12. And I talk about how in the beginning I was very shy, I was very non-communicative because I just came to Canada, my English was not good. And I talk about that progression over time, how I was like slowly getting comfortable, and eventually at the last summer, like I was able to take up leadership roles, like set up game booths and like lead activities and things like that. So that was a story about how I've grown as a person and how I was able to take on more responsibilities and end up impacting a lot of like my colleagues and the children that I supervise. So last but not least, the last essays, I wanted to do something a little bit more different. I talk about my experience back in Hong Kong as a student ambassador. So for the last one, I wanted to do it a little bit different. So I included my experience as a student ambassador back in Hong Kong. For context, my role responsibility is to welcome guests and parents in 3 different languages, Mandarin, Cantonese, and English. So a lot of the work involves like organizing events as a team and also like really communicating and welcoming these people to our school. So I wrote about my biggest takeaway from these things are really being professional in communication and how I learned about how I love working with people and how I love like serving people. So that's the bulk of these 3 supplementary applications. So at the end of this, like I think there are 2 major takeaways that you should really keep in mind when you're writing your supplementary applications. So the first one is, what's the goal of it? Like what kind of questions that you want to address through that particular essay? So for the first one, I address my spark to business, and the second one, I have shown my growth over time, and the third one, I talk about how I love people and how I love working people and serving people. And for you, it doesn't have to be the same, but you just have to keep in mind that you have a defined purpose of each essay that you wanted to like submit and communicate to the audience. So the second takeaway is that you have to think about how you can differentiate yourself out of the crowd, because there are so many people working on the same essays as you. So you want to pick a topic. You don't want to pick a topic that is like very common, very similar to what other people are writing. And if you do not have these like unconventional topics, you should think about how you can write it in a way that is very profound and very unique to yourself. And a few things that you can draw connections with is like your upbringing. Can you draw certain activities to your upbringings? Can you draw certain activities to your like maybe dream careers? Like, can you connect the dots? And the third one is, can you put specific examples and specific stories that are within your experience that only you can tell to the audience? So they are like different ways that you can differentiate yourself by having something more unique in your essays. So that's pretty much it. And last thing I wanted to talk about is I really suggest you to start as early as possible and get as many edits as possible. I think these two things are often being said a lot, but very few people really follow it. So try to really reach out to people at university or your schoolmates or even your teachers and tell them like, here's my essay, like how do you think of it? Like is grammar okay? Is it thought-provoking, or is it very like common and standard? Like you always want to seek feedback from these people, because the more perspective that you can get from it, like the better you can really shape your essay to be. So the second tip is talking to university students. This is something I didn't do when I was in grade 12, and I wish I could have done more, because a lot of times when you're applying to universities or even for jobs, you would talk to these people who are already in the field and get a sense of like what the program's like, what the job's like, what are the priorities. And after you get them, you can literally write that, include that in your essays. And that shows that you have done your research, you have done your homework, and you've identified that fit between you and the program. And that would definitely elevate your research, or like elevate your supplementary applications to much greater extent. So that's pretty much it for this video. Thanks for watching, and I'll be uploading a lot more videos in September. And I'll see you soon.